Welcome, my friends. So let's learn how to use these lines, how we can change their name and use them for our projects. So it's very easy. So with everything we have done now, we can just change it and with just few lines of code, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna grab this part here, wrapper. I'm just gonna comment those two things here, and now if I save it, it will be all mess, right? So what we can do is, so you can create this one. You can see here version number 1, and this will be version number 2 with name lines. So name lines, right? And what we can do here is we can create a name line, so we can name the grid lines. I'm just gonna now, even if I do expect it because we don't have it. So now we can name these grid lines here the way we want these lines to be. So, but we can do that very easily, and there is a, for some students there was a big confusion in my bigger course. So here I'm just gonna explain it a little bit differently. So I'm just gonna create grid template columns, because we do have here repeat 3, right? I'm not gonna start from here. I'm just gonna start from the grid template rows because it's gonna be easier for explanation. So here I can start the grid lines. I can name the grid lines if I put a bracket here, and if I create actual the name. So the name can be anything. You can put Rick here. You can create this is awesome. You can create everything. You can put everything. But naming the grid lines, as I told you, always put a meaningful name. Header. For example, I want the first row to be a header. So, and it needs to be 100 pixels, and I need the header to finish somewhere. So the best way is to use header start, and here you can put header end and finish whatever you want. But now you can see that I have 3 more rows that I need to, so if I change it, see, something will change. But now I have 3 more rows, and here instead of creating a separate like this, because here I can just copy this one, or I'm not gonna copy this, I can make a space, and I can say that from here I want navigation to start, and here I want navigation to end. Oops, nav end, right? So what I've done is I put 2 names here. This one will be for the first part, from here to here, and this one will be for the second part, right? But because I haven't finished this one, and I don't want to create a separate in brackets like this, square bracket, I will just create here, I will say content start. Remember that the 700 should be the content, right? Not the content. And I can create content start, and here I can close that one, content end. And by doing this, we're just saying, for example, content start this line, content end this line, header start this row line, header end, nav start, nav's end, content start, content end. That's how you do it. And the last one is footer start. Just gonna switch it like this. The last one is, I can put it here, footer start, and I can close it, footer end. So that's pretty much it. Now we have footer start and footer end. So we are done with naming our grid lines for the rows. But we need to name our grid lines for when we have repeat like this. It's going to be a little bit tricky. It's not going to be a little bit tricky. It's going to be, you need to understand something. So here, grid template columns, and I'm just going to remove this one, and I will say repeat again 3 1FR. all nice and dandy, but we need to fix this one. So here, what we can say column start, but we can't do column end like this. When I started, the logical for me was column start, column end like this, but it's not. So better you to put, I mean, it's logical, but before I was excluding this repeat 3 times, and I was putting column start 1, column start end. But with repeat, it automatically creates 3 variations of this. So we have 3 column start 1 to 3, and we have 3 column ends 1 to 3, right? So we're gonna have column start 1, column start 1 end, column start 2, column start 2 end, column start 3, and that's how you're gonna do it. And at the end, what we need to specify is we're gonna say grid end. You just need to tell where the grid end. This minus version, minus number, is that actually the grid end? So this is how we can do with repeats. If you have it something like this, for example, if you have 200 pixels, 300 and 400, you can do it like this. Call start, or you can name it whatever you want. So call start, column start 1, column start, column end, and grid end. So let's focus now. We need to change these things. So I'm just gonna comment this part here. So the main head, and I'm just gonna use the new name lines that we have created. So how are we gonna do this? So let's put it here, grid column, and here I will have column start, I did this one, and I will put 1, and I will say like this, and I will say grid end because it's -1, and I have column start 1 starting from here and to minus 1, and that will be the grid end. So let's just see what's happening here. Now you can see that it's all good, but we haven't even specified the row, but it's already in the position in the first and the second row. So we started. Don't expect that you're gonna see the name lines here, but you know now that this is column start 1 and this is grid end here. Very good. Now we need to do the same thing with the row. Now with the row, it's gonna be same thing, but we need to start, header end. We don't have numbers because header start and header end. And let's see if anything, if it's same like this, means that we have done a very good job. So now the header is positioned. So you can see that everything else now works like before, right? So because we haven't done a lot of things. Because a lot of the grids are already placed, and you can still use the numbers. But now we're just gonna do the grid lines. So if I change now the main nav here, if I just comment now, you will see that it will not work. But now let's figure out how we're gonna change this part in order to reflect the same 1 to 4 and 2 to 3, like that. So how I can do this is I can say column start 1 and grid end. I'm just gonna leave it like that. And header start, it's not anymore header start. It should be nav start and nav end. So now if I just remove this part, it will still work because it's already been positioned in the second place. But if I leave it like this, see what will happen? It will jump on top. And now if I just can hide it, z index -1, and you will see the header on top. So I just hide it. So now we need to position this one, header nav start. You're gonna use this one, nav start and nav end. nav start and nav end, and now it will be positioned perfectly. Very good. So let's put this one, oops, here. Let's comment this old, and let's see what will happen. Very good. Now, what we'll need to do now is actually we need to do with the content, right? So because we changed the content, we need to deal with the content, and the content, you know what, we're gonna leave the content at the end, because when we fix everything else, the content will be placed, right? So we can use this one as a reference what we have done before. So I'm just gonna change this one, and I'm gonna use the sidebar. I'm just gonna remove this part and see what will happen, and it will not go, it will not change. But so let's fix this one. Column start 1, and now it's interesting. It needs to go to where? It needs to go to the column end of 1. That's here. Remember that we have 1, and if I do this, look what will happen. It will go on this part, because this one has already been fixed in those positions, so it will create a new row. But that's all good, and what we can do now is just we just a column start, sorry, end 1. So we're telling that this is column start 1 and this is column end 1. And just refresh it now. It's going to back there, and I'm just gonna put here content start. So now we're gonna use this one, content start and content end. Let's hear it, because it's not in the row anymore, because it's gonna change. So content start means, because we name this area, we name this name line, put content start 700 pixels. That is why this content area, or the main content where it will go, it will be 700 pixels. So that is what we can do here. Just give me a second. So what we can do here is we can just, where was it? In the sidebar, we can just content start, and we can put content end, right? Where the content start and content end. So it means this row from here till here. That's why I'm positioning it there. And that's all done. Also, now let's change the content. So we have content start and content end. Now the perfectly is positioned, but let's just remove these two. And let's say column start 2, and we can just say grid end, right? And just save it, and nothing should change, because we are just saying from col start 2, and is that, and we just want to the end of the grid, and that end of the grid we name it as a grid end. That's why it's gonna work. So what else we need to do? Let's just jump to the ads, and let's just comment this part here. So if I save it now, what will happen? Yep, the ads are gone. So what we need to do is we need to put column start 1, and we need to put column end 1. Column end start 1 and column end 1. And now for the grid row, we need to say which one, the footer. We create the footer here, saying the footer starts and a footer ends, right? So that is the row that we are targeting, actually 4 and 5. So where is this one? Footer start and footer end. If for some reason, for example, you want, I'm just gonna comment this one, or I'm not gonna comment. For example, if you want to go to have a footer from this part to that to there, you just change to the grid end, right? And it will be, now the ad section will go, but this one will be on top, right? But actually now the ad section is stretching all over the place. So that's the main one. Now this one, we're just gonna, it's gonna stay there, but it doesn't know where to grow, because everything else is positioned. There is no other way footer to go, so it will stay there, but we need to tell them that he needs to go from the footer start to the footer end. That's here, footer start, footer end. Let's put it like this. That's not going to change much. So footer start, footer end, and we need to say which column. Now this is getting better. Column start 2, right? So this is the start of the 2, and this is the end. We need to put it at the end of the grid. Call or grid end. Let's save it. Let's see what will happen. And that's pretty much it, ladies and gentlemen. So now you know how to do, now you know how to name lines, and now you know how to use them. So again, in the repeat, I create column start and column end, and in between is one fractional unit. Means it will create 3 of these, and because it doesn't know where, because they're identical, it will put column start 1 and column end 1. Then the second one will be column start 2 and column end 2. The third one will be column start 3 and column end 3. And I put grid end because we just want to target the last minus here. On the template rows, we have first row is header start, header end. The second row, and we also know now how to use in one single bracket 2 names. So nav start and nav end. Then we have content start and content end. And now if you were confused about why we use content start and content end, because this is the row we are targeting. That's why we use for the left sidebar and for this one as well. And the last one, we haven't created add start, add end, but we have created footer start, footer end, and we can just make this one even like that. So this is a very nice layout. I mean, it's not nice because you have other ideas, but it's nicely styled with and nicely presented with this CSS grid, because it was very fast to create something like this. Otherwise it will take you a lot of coding, a lot of time, a lot of headaches to create design or layout like you want. So you can create anything you want, and yeah, so I think we are done for this part. We have another lecture coming for how we can use grid template areas. And that's a very important topic that you should understand. And after that, I think everything else will be very easy for you guys. So thank you, stay positive, and see you in the next lecture. Enjoy. Bye.